welcome back to my channel. I'm here with your weekly astrology oracle reading. As always, I am using an event chart for Dayton, Ohio at 11:11 a.m. and this is giving us a Leo sun, a Sagittarius moon, and a Libra rising. Now that Sag moon is at 27 degrees, which means it has almost completed its cycle through the sign of Sagittarius and will soon move on to Capricorn, followed by Aquarius. And because we are in Leo season, a moon in Aquarius means we are experiencing a full moon. So we will be having again a full moon in Aquarius in just a few days. And we know that the full moon is exact when both the sun and moon are at the exact same degree. So it's not just enough that both of them are in the opposing or opposite zodiac signs like Leo and Aquarius are, but that full moon is going to be exact when both of the degrees are also identical. Now, the same thing goes for whenever there is a new moon. So when there's a new moon, we have the sun and moon in the same sign, and we experience an exact new moon when they both meet at the same degree. Now, I talk a lot about degree theory in one of my most popular blogs, which is all about degree theory, so I will link that in the show notes below if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that. We have some very intense astrology this week. Not only do we have a full moon in Aquarius, but we have, where do I even begin? We have a trine between the sun and Chiron. We have an opposition between Venus and Pluto. We have a square between Mars and Saturn, and all of this energy is exact at the top of the week. So as I'm recording this again, you know, we're having these exact alignments. You know, the sun is at 16 degrees of Leo and Chiron is at 16 degrees of Aries. That is an exact trine. We also have Saturn at 22 degrees of Aquarius and Mars in Taurus is at 22 degrees. So exact. There is a lot of intense energy. I also have a blog about aspects, so if you're wondering a little bit more about what trines and squares and oppositions actually are, I will include a link in the show notes below for you. But yeah, just going into this week, we have some very interesting vibes out there. There is a really beautiful alignment that's happening between Neptune and Venus as well. And so, you know, there's good, there's hopeful, but there is so much tension and energy. And this goes even for in your personal life, you know, these are really deep transformational times, and whether or not you consider yourself an intuitive or a people person, or whether or not you are even around people a lot or not, you are going to see the tensions that these energies create showing up in your life this week. So something to think about, you know, whenever you're planning and preparing and making your to-do list. You know, it's Monday, we're at the top of a new week. Wouldn't be a bad idea to carve out some time to decompress and, you know, maybe even do some breath work or something that will just help bring some calmness and also grounding to your physical body. So all that being said, let's get a little shuffle going here. I hosted my first ever in-person sessions at the Well in Kettering over the weekend, and I'm so excited. If you've not heard the news, I will now be every month offering a selection of readings at the Well, which is a beautiful facility that is so full of love and nurturing and support for women in all different stages of health and healthcare, especially around maternity and baby, which is so up my alley, and I am super honored to be a part of this. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who came out and got a reading from me or even stopped by and saw the place. And, you know, the support has been phenomenal, and I can say that was one of the best days I've had in a really long time. So just a moment for gratitude, right? I also ended that night going out with a very dear friend of mine who is also very intuitive and witchy like and I was given a tarot reading that night, so that was super awesome. So, you know, great vibes, great vibes there. And I needed that to fortify me to go into this week because, you know, not only do we have a full moon in Aquarius, I am a natal Aquarian moon, but the moon is going to be creating a conjunction with Saturn. Another fun fact about me is I have this exact alignment in my natal chart. My moon and Saturn are also conjunct in Aquarius. So I am going to be feeling it. I already know. I know I'm going to be feeling it this week. And if you are someone that has a moon in a fixed sign, then you'll probably be feeling it this week too. And if you're wondering what the fixed signs are, it's Leo, Scorpio, Taurus, and Aquarius. So if you are an Aquarius moon or Leo moon specifically, buckle up, my love. And then also, and again, the Scorpio Taurus axis is just continuously activated throughout this year, and to see a full moon sort of create like a cross with that axis, it's intense all over for fixed signs. It just is. All right. I will say though, if you're an air moon, then this full moon in Aquarius will be creating a trine to your natal moon. Even with the co-presence of Saturn there, could be a really awesome opportunity for you to just, express yourself, let some things out, get organized, and possibly even put like a plan on paper. You know what I mean? Like taking something just from like an idea in a conception stage to like actually giving it some legs. All right, so I am going dead in the center today for the 11th house. Now, based on the chart that I'm using for Dayton, Ohio at 11:11 a.m. on August 8th, rather, I almost said 5th, the 11th house contains both the Sun and Mercury. Interestingly though, Mercury is in Virgo, and so there is a co-presence of two different signs within this house. Now, if you use a whole sign house system, this will never happen for you because that's just not how it's set up. But as I've mentioned in the past, I use a Placidus house system. So there is a co-presence of two very different energies here. We have fixed fire energy present, and then we have mutable earth energy present. So the 11th house, this is, as we can see notated here, friends. But it's not necessarily like your closest friends that feel like siblings or, something of that nature. For those very like local close things, we're actually looking at the 3rd house, especially for those friends, again, who feel more like siblings than just friends. That is the 3rd house. But the 11th house, this is more of like your peers, your audience, perhaps like your graduating class, people who you have a connection to in a kind of generational way or like a larger scale way. It can also be your internet friends, because interestingly, the 11th house is ruled by both Uranus and Aquarius, which I have videos on both, and I will include those links in the show notes as well. But Aquarius and Uranus have this connection to the internet, to like social networking, and just the idea of like networking over like the World Wide Web, right? Which, who even says that anymore? But that visual context, right, of creating a web of contacts is very much what the 11th house is to do with. Now, just because I say that the 11th house has associations to Aquarius and Uranus, that does not mean that that is how, you may experience this 11th house energy. So as I mentioned in this chart that I'm referencing today, we have a little bit of Leo and a little bit of Virgo. Neither of those two signs really bring forth Aquarian, Uranian energy, right? Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, and actually the Sun is the ruler of Leo. So interestingly, in this chart, both of those signs are in their rulership in the 11th house. Kind of interesting how these things fall, when we do these readings. But yeah, just because there is that Uranian, Aquarian energy associated with the 11th house, you could have an entirely different experience, right? Like you actually maybe don't like to be on the internet. You don't want to make friends on the internet. You really just use it as like a creative or like mindless outlet. There's also some people out there who, do have a presence on the internet and, influencers, if you will, content creators, but they have a persona. So it's not actually them. It is this persona or character. So there could be a lot of different ways that the 11th house plays out. And in fact, I would say, with a lot of that Leo energy in the 11th house and the Sun being there, I can very much see a very theatrical, performative individual who, when it comes to these larger peer systems, maybe they are centered around something that is, theatrical, comedic, tragic, and even, maybe someone who is just seen as like a presence, a go-to, and a source of energy for others. A lot of people who I have counseled that have planets in the 11th house are very exhausted by other people. And this can come from the fact that, you know, again, like you're being kind of perceived by a much broader audience in the 11th house. And that can be a lot of pressure, especially for those who have anxiety, right? So just to bring in some of that Virgo energy, if you have Virgo in the 11th house, you may be someone who, you know, certainly pays a lot of attention to what your friends like. You try to be very serving and, you know, just in general of service to them. But you're the kind of person that like remembers everybody's birthdays in the group and, you know, knows what everybody's coffee orders are and stuff. There can be a sense of people pleasing, I feel, when it comes to the 11th house, because, you know, the 11th house in the birth chart wheel here, this comes after the 10th house, right? So the 10th house is the very public domain of our life. It's what everybody else sees. It's how they interpret us. It's how they interpret our legacy and our reputation. So to go after that type of energy into the 11th house, where not only have you already been seen by everyone, but now you're making connections with them, right? It can be very overwhelming for some people. Now, it can be absolutely thrilling for others. You know, this can be something that a lot of people actually really love. Me personally, I have Mercury in the 11th house, and I can make friends with just about anyone, honestly. I know some people absolutely hate small talk. I'm not saying I love it, but I'm dang good at it. You know, this is what I have kind of gathered and earned from this placement, is a really great ability to communicate with a large group of people successfully, effectively, you know, and not always effectively, right? Like I'm not always good at what I say or do. Like we all are human and make mistakes. But I would say I do have an inherent quality to be able to communicate to the masses. Here I am making a YouTube video, right? So when it comes to friends in the 11th house, again, you know, depending on what your own chart looks like, this can be either very overwhelming for you, very exciting for you. And if you don't have any planets in the 11th house, then you maybe be a little more indifferent when it comes to those things. But there's something about special interest groups as well that I think is very worth mentioning with the 11th house. So, you know, again, when I think about the 3rd house, I'm thinking about like your best friends that you grew up with. You know, they live down the street and you've just, you know, turned into more like cousins and things of that nature. With the 11th house, though, a lot of these networking systems that we develop and make friends through have a lot to do with special interests. The reason I feel that is because the 11th house is opposite to the 5th house. And the 5th house is the house of creativity, of passion, of, you know, exuberant lovemaking and procreation. It's also the house associated with Leo and the sun. So there is a theatrical, you know, polarity of comedy and tragedy, all of that present in the 5th house. So that sort of shines itself, if you will, upon the 11th house. So if you would be curious about perhaps like your experience or your, you know, birth chart's interpretation of what that experience could be, how you connect with friends and where you connect with friends and the things that you all bond over, I would look to the 5th house and see if you can find any archetypal direction for following that, right? So according to this chart we have here, the 5th house has Saturn in Aquarius, and that again is an opposite zodiac sign to Leo, but more so what this means is that, you know, the friendships, according to this event chart again, the friendships that are sought out and that are made are fortifying. They're probably very like dutiful, very reliable, responsible. This particular chart does not illustrate an interest in connecting with people who are not mature. So I would imagine somebody that has this type of setup probably has a very small interest in connecting with people of a younger generation and is a little bit more interested in surrounding themselves with people they can learn from. So yeah, that is the 11th house in a nutshell. I'm gonna, of course, crack open my handy dandy guidebook here, which I can't thank Susan Shepard enough for putting together this gorgeous deck as well as this handbook, because it's such a joy to be able to utilize these resources and materials. All right, the 11th house. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Just walk beside me and be my friend. 3 graces of hope, faith, and charity, the bonds of friendship. Rely upon support from friends and other associations. Don't attempt to go at it alone. You will need help. The 11th house is all about associations and how we connect to others. Group alliances, ideals, aspirations, whether in the public or social arena. The 11th house is commonly referred to as the house of friends, but is so much more than that. It has everything to do with collective, from groups, people who identify and align with each other, especially those who want to make social change. There's that Aquarius popping up, right? By combining energies with others, we can make our world a domain for everyone, aka a better place. Before I go on, I just want to kind of like harp on this for a second, because I think that whether we are talking about our personal lives or we are talking about the collective, we so desperately need to work together. We so desperately need to come side by side, not look to follow, not look to lead, but standing, arm in arm with one another to try and make some kind of progress, to try and build some sort of integrity and dignity for relationships. Because truthfully, the more that I grow and witness change in this world, the more I feel very disconnected from others, just because the boundaries that are put up, right? The flags that people fly, the Wi-Fi names they choose, the clothes they wear, when they are instinctively triggering, and we witness these things so much, it can be very difficult to have that hope and faith. Those 3 pillars of friendship. And the hardest thing to do is to try and be friends with your enemy, but I digress. The 11th house card says that we are not alone in the world. It's time to aim higher and go among the broader society. Work with others, share your energies. It's not a good time to stay alone. Allies and other groups are necessary. When this card turns up in a reading, it's time to focus on friends, groups, and associations. To achieve your objectives, it's time to pool resources. There could be changes in your friendships or associations. There could also be an important goal or desire that you're trying to work towards, representing a collective creativity. Someone else may have the very information that you need to further your cause or goals. Sometimes this card can also have something to do with the sudden disappearance or appearance of someone in your life. This house is also associated with stepchildren or children who belong to your lover. The appearance of the 11th house card means the collective, those who support you as friends. It can also indicate enemies and rivals. It could just be a spirited competition, though. It can bring out the best in everyone. In the end, it's about what works out for everyone. It's not a good time to serve exclusively your needs. Be a comrade. So that's what I'm going to leave you at, How can you be a better friend this week? How can you show up for others? How can you be there for people and support people who maybe don't do the same for you? Or better yet, if you are really interested in becoming an ally and help support social groups and social justice and all of these wonderful things that we have existing, rather than reinventing the wheel, why don't you align yourself with individuals who have already been doing the work? There is no need to start another business or a nonprofit for many of the issues that we're looking at and dealing with, because they already exist. So focus on alignment instead of creation. All right, that's what we have for this week, my friends. How do you feel about it? Leave a comment below and let me know. And until then, I'll talk to you next Monday. Bye.